Hello, it's Cindy from the Osterville Village Library, and today we are very excited to have Kari Parcell. She is from the Barnstable County Extension, and she is also the award winner for 2020 in the municipal category for recycling. So she's always very, very knowledgeable in this subject. She has a very great resume and has a master's. Is it from the Mass Maritime Academy?
No, I actually am an adjunct professor at Mass Maritime. I teach sustainability in solid waste practices, or I guess sustainable systems for solid waste
Wow.
practices. My master's is in public administration and emergency management from Southern New Hampshire. And then I have an undergrad from the University of Oregon in political science and economics.
Oh, wow. What do you do in your spare time? So you've worked your way pretty much across the United States to Cape Cod, studying things in different states on how people deal with different waters and wastewaters and things like that. And
Yep.
we're so happy you landed on Cape Cod. And I'm going to turn this presentation over to you because you are the expert. So thank you so much for being here.
All right, great, Cindy. And I guess I'm going to assume questions are coming into the chat box and you'll address them after the presentation or during, or how would you like to manage that?
We can see after probably.
Okay, great. So hi, everybody. I cannot see anything other than my presentation, so I apologize if it looks like my eyes are going all over. I'm so used to looking at people in a room, and I still, even after over a year of working from home and doing presentations virtually, I, still feel like it's just strange. I feel like I'm talking to myself in a room. So I appreciate being here. As Cindy said, I work for the Department of Environmental Protection. My home base is Barnstable County's Cape Cod Cooperative Extension Office. My district is the Cape and Islands, so I serve Barnstable County, Dukes, and Nantucket counties. So I would say year-round, I serve about 270,000 residents and the 23 municipal programs that serve our trash and recycling needs. So I'm often asked to speak upon things like, where does our trash go? How do I recycle right? Is this recyclable? Are there alternatives to recycling? Is it still working? What are the myths? Things like composting, anaerobic digestion. I basically do everything that's non-hazardous. We have a woman in our extension department that is our hazardous waste specialist. So anything that's sort of too toxic to trash is sort of her wheelhouse. And then everything else, construction, demolition, to household kitchen trash is really sort of what I deal with on a daily basis. So thank you so much. I did not change the date on this presentation. I did this one back in March for the Orleans Conservation Trust. There was about 70 people in the virtual room, so that was pretty exciting. And I got a lot of positive feedback for this presentation, so I figured I would just stick with it. Again, normally I know my room, I can see my audience, I ask questions like, have you ever heard of a waste ban? And surprisingly, not a lot of people have, but it is a fun fact that you can take home and tell your friends and family and folks that you work with, that since 1990, Massachusetts has been implementing waste bans. And what that means is these are materials that are literally illegal to put into the trash stream. They're not supposed to go into a landfill. They're not supposed to go to a waste to energy facility. And depending on where you live on the Cape and Islands, that's where your trash goes. It either winds up in a landfill or it goes to a waste to energy facility. So these are items that are banned from our waste stream. So ABC is the asphalt, concrete, brick. That's kind of construction demolition. Cathode ray tubes are those big tube TVs that we used to have back in the day. And it has a lot of nasty chemicals in there. Gypsum wallboard is things, it's that drywall is what that is. Commercial food just means by tonnage, it's commercial food waste and not something that, a banana peel and some oranges from our personal kitchens. Glass and metal containers, so your wine bottles, soup containers, little cat food containers, things like that. A lot of people ask me what a white good is. Those are appliances, things like the stove or oven in your kitchen, a refrigerator, an air conditioner. A lot of the times, if it's Freon based, like a refrigerator, they remove the Freon. Then the refrigerator itself is scrapped for its metal, and then they cord it because you have to plug it in. And there's actually iron and copper in those cords that make those refrigerators turn on, right? The electricity. And then we have our basic recycling, you know, newspaper, cardboard, mixed paper, office paper, plastics 1 through 7s, although some of them are really difficult to recycle. So there's some twisty parts on it, but there are certain plastics that really should not go into our waste stream. And those are like the single-use water bottles, Gatorade, you know, your 2-liter Coca-Colas, things like that. So think beverage and food on those plastic resins. So I get really excited when I get to talk about this topic. Again, I'm usually in a room, I get to ask questions, I get to get people to raise hands and say, hey, I've heard about it, etc. So this is just me talking about active diversion programs. So one of the things that we started about 3 years ago, it was from an AmeriCorps member. She approached me and said, can we recycle Christmas lights? And I was like, yeah, we can. So normally a strand light, a Christmas light, when I'm talking about tailing like that refrigerator, that electrical cord, well, these Christmas lights have that copper and iron in them. That's what makes them light up when you plug them in, if they're not battery based. And what happens is if you throw them into the metal pile, they actually strip the lighting for that copper and metal. This is my good friend, Tom. He's a Provincetown resident. He had his partner take a photo of him putting his Christmas lights into the recycling bin at Provincetown. That bucket is from the town of Barnstable. That is probably close to 900 pounds of Christmas lights. That's one town with one collection. So you can see my tiny little Subaru there did not suffice for pickup. So my first pickup was an utter fail. That is the town of Sandwich, and it's only a half of a 96-gallon container. So that's about, I would say, 250 pounds of Christmas lights in my trunk of my car right there. So I got smart and I actually borrowed a pickup truck with an open flatbed trailer, and I would load it up into the trailer and take it to our recycler in the town of Hyannis. And then I would go back to each town throughout November and January picking up Christmas lights. I did it by myself this year. I would not recommend it. They're heavy, they're tangly. I ripped my hand open, so I started wearing gloves after a while. But it's a really great thing, and it's a program that the transfer stations will do for you year round. I even picked up from a couple of residents who put it at the end of their driveways because they couldn't access the transfer station. So I told them I'd come to their homes and just to leave it out for me like curbside trash. So the next, I'm sorry, I think I might have skipped a slide. I did. So we have the thing called processed glass aggregate. This is in the town of Dennis. This program began in May of 2019. There was a ribbon cutting. That's Chad in the center photo with one of my supervisors from the state. So since I work for the state and the county, I had 2 different supervisors. That's Brooke Nash. We have 5 towns that use this processed glass aggregate facility. And what it means is that we take recyclable glass and they process it down to a 3/8-, and it can be used in sewage drain fill, highway projects. It could go as like a bedding in a parking lot, along with other materials that you would use to bed that parking lot. We have a 4th consecutive year. This year will be our 5th year of latex paint recycling. Mark your calendars, August 7th. This year at the town of Dennis, the Tony Kent Arena, we're taking latex only for recycling. And that can be recycled into latex paint all over again. So it used to be dry it out, throw it out, or, you know, put some dirt or kitty litter in there, dry it out, throw it out. So now what we do is we collect it, recolor. This is Tanya over here with the mask on in front of the recolor paint banner. And her business takes the latex paint back and makes it into new latex paint. And she sells it at wholesale prices because latex paint is actually considered a luxury item. Because if you think of a gallon of gas, it's like, what, $2.65 right now, something like that. Well, a gallon of paint can cost you almost $80 sometimes, depending on the brand. That's a lot of money for a gallon of liquid. So she sells it for around $19 a gallon, and it's 100% recycled. And then obviously our household hazardous waste collections, that Calliope, my colleague over at the extension runs, but I often assist her managing those. We have a 3rd year expansion for boat shrink wrap recycling. The containers were just dropped off yesterday and today in the town of Dennis, Bourne, and Eastham. And then Chatham and Wellfleet have their own containers in which they're collecting the shrink wrap. So if you're a Cape Cod resident or your boat lives here and you're unwrapping it for the summer season, we will be collecting that through the end of June at those locations that I mentioned. If you have, you know, any questions, I'll put my contact information up.
Yeah, question in there. if you live in Barnstable, can you take it to Dennis?
Yes,
Or-
you can. Just
Okay.
bring your shrink wrap. Let them know when you get to the gatehouse in Dennis that you brought your shrink wrap and you'd like to participate in the program. But
Okay.
respectfully, don't bring your Barnstable trash and recycling because the town of Dennis has to pay for that. But shrink wrap is free to you, and those are where the collection sites are. So absolutely.
And I got to butt in another question here. Where does that lady sell her paint at discounted prices?
So you can go to recolorpaints.com. They are sold in the Habitat for Humanity stores.
Oh.
And I think there's a store called Restore.
Right.
I think you can check with the town of Yarmouth, but you can order it online and she can send it to you. Her name is Tanya. She's wonderful. So I think they have 24 different colors. So it's not like a Benjamin Moore or a, Home Depot's Bear products where you have hundreds of thousands of choices, and they do chalk paints as well. And I think there's 12 palettes on those. So it's a nice alternative, and it's way less expensive, and it's really quality stuff. The town of Orleans actually painted their new DPW building with Recolor paint, and they're actually using the processed glass aggregate in their sewage project. So Orleans is doing a phenomenal job in reusing some of these program materials that we have.
Got one other question that came in. On the dentist that reuses the aggregate glass, is that just something, do they do that also for all of Cape Cod, or is that just strictly for Dennis residents?
So there's 5 towns that participate: the town of Barnstable, Harwich, Mashpee, Wellfleet, and then Dennis. I think I captured 5. And what happens is when you go to your transfer station and you put your glass in that source separated bin that says glass only, that glass is then taken, trucked down to the town of Dennis, and tipped on this big site that's away from the public because of the safety concerns that folks would have. And then once they hit a certain amount of tonnage, so it's anywhere between 600 and 1,000 tons, they call in a vendor who actually processes that glass. And it takes about 3 days to process that amount of glass. And then it becomes stockpiled as an aggregate. And then they sell it to, say, RB Hour, who works these highway projects, and they buy it off of them and use it as aggregate. So you actually go to your individual municipality to take it there, and then it winds up. If it's in a dual stream, meaning the glass goes in with your plastics or cardboards, we can't do it because now you have to sort of separate everything out. So it's only towns who decided to participate in this program who take glass in glass only containers so that it can be tipped over at the town of Dennis. And it's recyclable glass. So, no blender glass, no picture frames, no mirror glass, no windshields, no candle jar glass. That's all tempered stuff. It's completely different than recyclable glass. So again, you can check with me if you have any questions regarding that program. Good questions out there. Anything else, Cindy?
Not right now, I think.
All right. Another thing that Cape Codders do, as well as Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, is we have food waste collection at 8 towns right now. I thought Provincetown was doing it, but apparently they were unable to begin the program. So what happens is these are 3 different towns. That's Barnstable. This woman was so pleased to pose for me. That little plastic bag is a newspaper sack. You do not put the newspaper sack in the bin, but what she does is she kind of turns it over and squeezes it out like a tub of toothpaste. The food comes out, and then she takes her plastic bag and puts it into the trash can. The middle there is the town of Falmouth. And then the one on the right, or my right, looking at the screen, is Chatham. And all 3 of these programs have a local vendor that comes and picks up the containers, puts it in the back of the truck, and then the town employees kind of spray them out real quick with some water and sets it right back up. There's a couple of towns that take their containers to the town of Dennis to be collected, just to make it easier on the vendor so that they don't have to drive all the way down to Truro. They can stop in Dennis and collect from 3 different towns rather than each individual town. And as you can imagine, in the summer, it's very hard to get around here. So again, this would be a question to the audience. Has anybody heard of the Chinese national sword? And at this point, most people have heard about it, but back when this first happened in 2018, 2017, not a lot of folks had heard about it. They just sort of heard that China closed our markets, and now recycling doesn't happen and everything's a trash can now, right? And then the second global event is obviously COVID-19. And both of these events dramatically changed not only the waste streams themselves, but how we manage them and the cost to manage them. So these are just family recyclers. This is a woman that's obviously dealing in plastics. We do not bag our recyclables here in the Commonwealth. So you see how some of these have plastic bags wrapped around them. That's not how we put it freely into our bins, not in bags. The gentleman there is dealing in newspaper and paper and cardboard. And then that's just a cargo ship that goes out to port. So these just massive ships with these massive cargo containers carrying bales of recyclables. So the Chinese national sword, this is a wordy slide. I'm not going to read to you. I'm going to assume that everybody here can read and can hear me. So basically back in 2017, the Chinese government said, no more, we're not taking the world's trash, because those bales of recyclables were just full of garbage. It wasn't these nice clean bales of paper and plastics and metals and all the things that they were really looking for. It was those things with a lot of trash in it. So the Chinese government gave us about a year and then basically cut it down and started enforcing it. So when these cargo containers would show up to port in China, they would have enforcement officers that would open the containers and do a quick peek. And if it was too contaminated, they turned you away. And if you were turned away, that's a $10,000 fine. And if you brought 10 containers, they would automatically reject all 10 of them, assuming they all look the same. And so you're $100,000 out on that cargo container. Plus you have to pay for the cost of transporting it back or disposing of it as trash. So it was really an issue to target contamination in the recyclables. So too much trash in all of our beautiful clean recycling. So what happened? Basically, they gave us a year, 2018. They said, yep, no more. The market collapsed because they were taking about 80% of the world's domestic, developed countries recycling. And the reason it looks like that is because not every country has sustainable management for their solid waste. That's why you see illegal dump sites. That's why you saw the trash avalanche in India back in 2017 that killed, I think, 317 people living in the villages below this giant trash mountain because there's no regulation for trash. So China was taking regulated recyclables, processing it there and then sending it back to us, like these Amazon boxes where you send them our cardboard, they send it back to us in a new pretty cardboard box. So it really meant slowing down at a MRF, which is a material recovery facility. That's where recyclables here in the Commonwealth are sorted. So our recyclables go to this facility, they sort it out with conveyor belts and all this other stuff and optic lighting and blowers, and it puts all these different materials into different streams. And then when it comes out, it's baled and then trucked out to go to port or to go somewhere else. It doesn't have to go to China. The Commonwealth and especially Cape Cod, a lot of our recyclables actually stay domestic. And I don't mean on the Cape or in the Commonwealth, but in the Carolinas, Virginia, other textile places, especially are plastics. So that's kind of good news. And there's a lot of paper and fiber mills that are popping up. So what happened was China closed their markets. They said, everything's too contaminated. You have to come up and follow these new regulations. But new markets, of course, right? It's globalism. So China closed. So, India, Vietnam, Malaysia, the Philippines all said, okay, well, we'll take it then. So it started to move again. So once you had this bottleneck where it's like, oh, what do we do? New markets opened. And then we started to sort of not learn our lesson and keep sending. But everybody said it has to be cleaner. And when you clean something up, that takes time, and time is money. There's a cost to that. So we used to say, with in doubt, throw it out. Someone else will sort it out. Well, kind of true. Now it's with in doubt, just throw it out. Don't wish cycle. Don't throw it in your bin going, I really, really hope this is going to get recycled, because there's a good chance it might not, because there's only a few materials that are truly recyclable out in our
New
economy.
markets. Does anybody, I know they check, there's a lot of things like with, we've all seen those horrible pictures out of like China in different places where these kids are like looking for things in these horrible dump sites and stuff. Does anybody like from the United States monitor where we're sending this stuff, that their people are treated fairly or?
Right. So the EPA is sort of in charge of that overreaching federal. So whatever the EPA standards are, those are regulations that every state within the United States are supposed to adhere by. And then you have state regulators like the Mass Department of Environmental Protection or like the Oregon Department of Environmental Protection. I think Connecticut is the Connecticut Energy and Environmental Department. So every state kind of has an underreaching under the federal guidelines, and then the states under those regulations allow local communities to operate under those. So there are guidelines and there are regulations.
What are the
Enforcement is,
countries though? Is
say that
it like,
again?
what about with the countries? If it's shipped to like Malaysia or Vietnam, these new emerging places, are there any guidelines then, or are we hurting the people that are living there?
It's
I
it's
mean,
kind of a, it's out of sight, out of mind.
yeah,
We would like to think that they have overarching regulations, similar to ours or parallel to what we're doing. There are loopholes to things. So, for example, we're not allowed to send heavy plastics to China anymore, but Canada can. So the United States sends those plastics to Canada, and then Canada sends them to. So there's always like this loophole
right.
of how to get around things, and trash is $1 billion industry. It's billions of dollars, right? Remember The Sopranos and Waste Management in Chicago, and these big trash guys made billions of dollars creating these trash companies and charging people. And the reason why is because we don't want to be swimming in our own filth, right? So that's kind of the COVID. Yes, theoretically, and yes, there are standards and regulations. Enforcement is somewhat lacking, and just because we have a standard doesn't mean another country has that same standard or regulation under it. So we might be processing something under a certain standard, and they might be accepting something that has a lower threshold just because their overreaching authority doesn't look at it the same way we do. These iron rivers, those orange rivers, things like that you see in China, those are, that's why there's a lot of kids that have really high iron counts in their bloodstreams, high birth rate defects, mortality rates, infant mortality rates, things like that, because there's no regulation in those countries to manage this stuff. They're trying to, and they're getting at it. That's why China decided that they wanted to put a stop to it, is because they were tired of seeing the people living like that. So a couple of years into this whole national sword thing, we were really kind of getting our footing back. We were cleaning up the recycling. We were finding new markets. We were saying no more. We were educating people. We were, going out and really saying, like, this is what the right way is if you want it to truly be recycled and not just dumped off into the residual and then wind up in the landfill. Came COVID. And what COVID did was, now we see a lot of single-use takeout with the restaurants. The stay-at-home effect with the Amazon effect. We're now afraid to go grocery shopping. We're afraid to get our cat food or dog food or groceries, or we're just sitting at home bored for a little while, right? Like we don't all have jobs that allow us to sit, at home in our antique chairs, looking at the computer screen and continuing to work. So people were bored and they were redecorating or cleaning out their sheds or their yards. So we started to see a lot of materials increase as far as garbage, but that increase in garbage was not only things that we finally are getting to our projects, but now we have all this cardboard and single use, takeout stuff. So, and then we have PPE, right? So we see masks everywhere. Please cut the cords on the masks. They get caught just like those little 6-pack reins, and people don't think about it. Cut those up and please put them in the trash, not the recycling bin. And then, so we saw, I think on the Cape, we saw about 20 to 25% increase in the amount of trash that we were disposing of based on home clean outs, takeout effects with restaurants, and then the Amazon, I call it Amazon, but Chewy, what's the Hello Fresh, all that other stuff that was coming into our homes. So this is basically what I was saying is, that we have an overall increase in amount of solid waste, both at the curb and at the transfer stations. Commercial waste went down, thinking of, commercial waste as far as manufacturing and shopping, because nobody was allowed to leave their homes for a while. So that kind of waste went down. Now it's gradually going back to normal. But what happened was residential household waste went up, commercial waste went down. Nationally, it was about 40%. Cape and Islands about 15 to 20, sometimes 25%, depending on the waste stream. Going into 2021, we are leveling out. Swap shops are still closed. I know a lot of people with bleeding heart swap shoppers. Stay tuned. We really, really want to make sure that everybody is safe when we reopen these. And we do know that, like, Chatham right now is a red zone again for the new variants of COVID. So we all have to be very, very careful and very mindful of going out. So Mass DEP in 2019, to respond to the National Sword, created the Recycle Smart widget and website, recyclesmartma.org. This is the infographic that says, let's ask yourself, is that recyclable? So remember, with in doubt, throw it out. Keep that in mind. If you're really not sure it's recyclable, you don't have time to go onto the website, you don't have time to call me personally and say, can I put this in my trash? Or can I put this in the recycling bin? Just throw it out, save the headache, save the cost, save the recycling. But this is a really nice infographic you can get and print it out and put it on your refrigerator if you want. And it's a good reminder of what can go in there. Barnstable County's response, Jack Units, our former county administrator in 2019, reached out to me and we had a couple hour long conversation in the summer, and I was sitting in a CVS parking lot after hours talking about trash and his visit to Copenhagen and what's happening with diminishing capacity, why are the landfills closing, the moratorium on waste to energy facilities, like the cost itself, like how do we do this? So we created a steering committee of myself, a couple of my colleagues over at the Cape Cod Commission, Jack and the Barnstable County Health Director. We created a scope of work, like here's what we're gonna do. Then we presented that scope of work to the county commissioners and then the assembly of delegates. They approved $150,000 for a feasibility study. So we turned that scope of work into an RFP, which is a request for proposal from these experts, right? Like I'm an expert, but I'm not an expert in building capacity to manage these materials. I can tell you where they go and how they operate in a general sense. But if somebody came to me and said, oh, how many tons of, plastics do we need to make a pyrolysis facility work? And I go, 25 tons? I don't know. I'm not that expert. And then we had 2 bidders on the project. We signed with them. So we signed our contracts in November of 2020. It's closing November 21. And the purpose is really to, decrease the cost, improve efficacy of managing materials, as well as looking at our environmental footprint, hauling it out of state, hauling it out of the Cape, going over the bridge. If we put some sort of facility here, how are we affecting the ecology and the neighborhoods that we have here on Cape Cod? So this is what our waste stream looks like according to one of our vendors. This is an early model. So when it says 112 or 112,600 households, that's only relating to households that go to the transfer station. This is not inclusive of folks who have, NASA disposal or waste management or whoever come to their curb. This is just folks that use a municipal facility. They go to the transfer station, or if they're the town of Bourne, it is curbside because the town of Bourne does operate that. Whereas like Chatham, I either go to my Chatham transfer station or I hire somebody to pick it up. That's how the municipalities work as far as trash. Like I said, it either goes to a landfill or it goes to a waste to energy facility. If you look at the average transfer station sticker on the Cape, it's about 106. Martha's Vineyard is about 30. Nantucket doesn't charge to use their facilities. They're posh over there, right? But taxes definitely certainly absorb those costs. So it's not like it's free. It's just they don't have to physically buy something every year and stick it on their car window. And then the average tipping fee for MSW is about $87.50. That is up from $38.50 in 2017. So that's huge. It's a big jump. And then off Cape, the islands and Nantucket is about $165 per ton to dump trash. I mean, that's very expensive. So I know this is.
Just want to clarify this. When you said tipping is not like you go to a restaurant, you tip somebody. That's to tip the truck.
Yes. So if you think about a trash truck, it's got like that kind of, hoisting mechanism, and it tips onto the floor. And so we call it tip. And every ton that lands, it's a tipping fee to the hauler that brings the trash to the end facility. So it's either the landfill or the waste to energy where it's incinerated to create energy. And that's for MSW, just regular trash, municipal trash. So this is a really teeny tiny graph, but this just shows things that are divertible from the trash stream and what value or part of the waste stream it is. It doesn't mean that if you were to open a trash bag, this is the amount of waste that's divertible in it. But if you were to put our entire waste stream together and call it trash and then start pulling things out that are obviously not trash, that's the percentage of what you would see in these streams. So that's kind of what a waste composition is, or what it looks like. So what are the top 10 to go in the bin? So there's actually 11 things here, but it's OCC is cardboard, mixed paper and newspaper. Mixed paper is things like your office paper, glass, wine bottles, pickle jars. You can put the metal lid back on if you'd like. Plastics, tin and aluminum. So trying to think, like a soup can, bottles, jugs, jars, and tubs. If you think of anything that kind of comes with a plastic beverage, or, you know, food container, those are the bottles, jugs, jars, and tubs. So those are the top 10 in the bin. But we sort of kind of think of recycling as the cure to the trash stream. And the problem with that is that the recycling bin should be the next bin to the trash. What we should really do is think before we trash it or recycle it, right? So there's all of these different things. So when you think of the recycling bin as the last to the trash bin, so it's like the next best thing, but is it? So you can refuse it, rethink it, reduce it, donate it, refurbish it, sell it, gift it, compost it. So there's all these other ways to divert materials that are not just putting it into the recycling bin that wants those top 10, right? And then just to kind of recap this, you know, portion of it. So we have the waistbands. Now, you know, if you didn't, the state of the Cape, since 2017, I was hired in February 2017. So all of those great programs I just spoke about, you know, the processed glass aggregate, the food waste, the latex paint recycling, the boat shrink wrap recycling, those are all programs that I worked with my municipalities to put in place so that they're free to use. So you have access to them, so that, you know, instead of drying out and throwing out your latex paint, you can take it to this collection and it'll be turned into new reusable paint. There are stipulations. I mean, it can't be like full of debris. It can't be frozen with skin clumps. It's got to be nice, usable stuff. But, you know, it could be up to 10 years old. We call it legacy paint. It's been sitting in the basement. You know, you buy a new house and somebody left their paint behind. We talked about the national sword, COVID-19, how we have this uptick in trash. We talked about how the state implemented Recycle Smart, which is an education campaign, how we're cleaning up our recyclables. It's no longer quantity, it's quality at the port or when it goes to the Carolinas. The county response, I'm working with the Cape Cod Commission. I've been doing this since, oh gosh, almost 2 years now since Jack had that conversation with me. So we're looking at a regional solution. I know we hate the word regional here on the Cape because we're all parochial, right? But collectively we can, you know, source, share our resources, and then the top 10 in the bin. There are other things that can be recycled that don't go in a bin, like a mattress, clothing, textiles, wood, you know, the white goods that I was telling you about, those appliances. Obviously you don't put that in recycling bin, but to take it to the right place and to collect it, there's vendors out there that do pick it up and recycle those materials. But what's really important is the bin that sits at home, or the bin that we go to our apartment complexes and put the materials in. So the last piece that I want to speak about, and then open up the floor to any more questions, and feel free to interrupt with questions, is that CPI is the commodities price index. It's kind of like Wall Street. It's this global thing that happens with supply and demand. So if we are recyclers and I'm a vendor and I'm, you know, KLP plastics, whatever, and I want your plastics and there's too much supply for my demand, I'm not going to give you much for it. But if there's no supply to my demand, I'm going to pay you a lot of money for that. So it kind of goes like that, and it ebb and flows based on transportation costs, the need, the availability of a vendor, how badly do they want that. Fiber's doing really well right now. Fibers are the newspaper, cardboard, and mixed paper. So the fiber markets are booming. Instead of paying to get rid of it, towns are making money. They're not making anything, but they're not paying to get rid of it. The vendors are paying them per ton, but it has to be clean. If it's contaminated, they're not going to pay you for it. So, it's scrap metals have almost always had value. So Christmas lights is a scrap metal that's valuable with the copper and iron inside. So it's kind of like on an economy of scale, supply and demand. There's like, wait, Cape Cod, right? There's not enough houses for sale, but everybody wants one. So the markets, can you buy a house on the Cape? If you can right now, congratulations. Because I'm one of those young folks who are about ready to turn 40. I'm single and I have 2 full-time jobs. I own a clothing store and I still can't afford to buy a house. So to everybody who can, congratulations. So again, when you're looking at the global impacts, it affects the local markets. Okay. So whatever's happening in China and Malaysia and in the Carolinas and with Coca-Cola, it affects us regionally. It affects us Cape Codders, and it affects you in Barnstable or Bourne or wherever you live on the Cape. And so, it just makes tighter end specifications. It's subject to the market fluctuations that supply and demand. And then you have to recognize the market conditions. So, if you source separate your materials, like the town of Barnstable went from single stream and made it totally annoying for you to have to walk around and put it actually benefits you, because now the town of Barnstable can go, hey, we're getting more for cardboard. Let's give the cardboard here and let's do the scrap metals here. But if you mix it all into one pile, there's no value. You just pay for what it is because you're not separating it, somebody else is. So you can't follow the markets. So it's a good thing. It's a pain, but it's a good thing. And depending on which end of the 6 or the 9 you're standing, it's old school or new school, right? It's like, why are we going back to this? Or why are we going back to that? It just depends. Because I hear people say, why are we going back to single stream? And I hear people say, why are we going back to source separating? So it's whatever end on the 6 or the 9. And then what happens is DEP is here to support and help municipalities with things like grants that your towns receive. Since I've been on board, I believe the Cape and Islands municipalities have received a little over $6 million in grant program funding to help the municipalities engage in recycling and diversion and reduction programs. And you're not seeing it quite at the moment, but the goal someday is so that the bottom line is not only do we have a cleaner environment, we're litter free, we're cleaner, but your pocket, your wallet, that it's going to be a little heavier because you're not spending so much money on getting rid of this stuff. So this is just some fun facts. It's about 2,000 businesses in the Commonwealth with about 14,000 employees. It's about 3.2 billion in revenue. And it's against the law, but it's costly and has no environmental benefits if we don't recycle. That's kind of the end game. Be like this guy, wear your waste. So this gentleman likes to annoy the New York, what do they call it in New York? Is it the subway? Because I know like in Chicago it's the L and here it's the T and whatever. So anyway, this guy will literally, he covers himself in like the double plastic so that the plastic tape sticks to his clothing. And then he has like the plastic, like the sticky end, it's like double stick tape. And he walks around the city and literally takes trash and puts it onto his suit and then sits around the subways all day showing people he's wearing their waste, or sometimes he wears his own waste. If he has some popcorn, he'll throw his popcorn bag there. So in closing, when there's no other options, find the bin. It's just before the trash can. But if you can refuse it, divert it, sell it, gift it, refurbish it, consign it. I own a consignment shop. All of those different fun things that you can do for reuse and rethinking before recycling. But recycling does work. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm just giving you more options than the bin. Again, the gal in the pink jacket, Brooke Nash, my supervisor at the state, for the long term of our communities, our economy and environment, we reap huge rewards and natural resources, and we create, we salvage energy that we're not dredging these raw materials. We're reusing things like aluminum and glass is a closed economy. They become aluminum and glass again. And we save on our greenhouse gas emissions. And that's just the state of recycling. So when you think about recycling, that's what it does for us. Here's our contact info. Kari, I have an M.P.A, which is a Master's of Public Administration. I work for DEP Barnstable County. That's my email. My office line, this is my office. And when you call that number, it actually rings to my laptop and I hit answer and I talk to you just like I am now. And you can video option. If you want to have a video call with me, you can do that as well. The little baby picture is my professional photo. It was taken in Boston Common. The middle one is me touring the expansion of the Bourne landfill, phase 6. And I actually didn't mean to make this one sort of a work photo, but I have my Cape Cod Cooperative Extension jacket on with our seal for the county. And my girlfriend made me that mask. And she, well, I guess her and her husband make the masks. But anyway, she gave me a few of them. So I was wearing it out and about, and I wanted to show her that I was wearing it. And the picture came out perfect to where the county seal was right there. So I thought, well, how clever for 2021 that we have a masked photo of ourselves working. So with that, I think I spent about 43 minutes chit-chatting and giving you so much information, but feel free to ask questions and present ideas, or go anywhere you want with any of this stuff. I'm here to assist.
Well, I'll give you all the questions. So your composting slide showed 3 places, and I know you're going to do composting next.
Yep.
Where does that go that's being composted in those places?
Okay, good question. So if your transfer station has a food waste collection, those toters, Falmouth and Mashpee goes to Black Earth Composting. They took over Mary Ryther's farm out of Falmouth. And then the other towns that are listed go to Watts Family Farm out of East Sandwich. They have a site in Forestdale, and they also have a site in Rochester when they expanded. So they're both, Black Earth is not local to the Cape like Watts is, but they did take over a local farm here. Mary wanted to partner. She's now the recycling coordinator for the town of Falmouth, but she used to own the compost facility at her family Christmas tree farm in Falmouth.
Does the trash train still run?
Yes. So my predecessor, Dave Quinn, it was the Dave's trash train, and now it's been known as the Kari trash train. It goes from Yarmouth all the way through Rochester, and it has a few different stops. So for example, Dennis will truck their trash to the town of Yarmouth, and it goes on that train, and it goes up to the waste energy facility in Rochester, and that's called CMAS Covanta.
This may or may not, but it has some question on all the dog poop that doesn't get picked up, and then the plastic bags that's in it. Is there anything that can be responsibly done there?
It's an interesting question, because I have a dog, and it's often a conundrum, because here I am picking up her tiny dog size, and I have these plastic bags that are fitting for a small dog. I'm not using like giant bags. I don't like to buy dog poo bags. Like people buy bags like specifically. I save anything that comes in plastic, and that's how I pick it up. So if you don't pick it up, it's going to leach into the ground, and it goes into our drinking water, single sole source aquifer. Or, yes, it's, treated, right? Wastewater treatment. Or, you're utilizing some sort of specific bag. I like to, if I have like a popcorn bag or something, I cut it up into squares so that it's just enough to pick up and twist and then throw it in the trash. So it's trash anyway, but I like to save things that would protect my hand from cleaning it, but not necessarily to buy a specific plastic bag for it. So that's my way of managing it.
It's funny you asked for suggestions. I got one here. Have you ever thought of like an Alexa app or an app? So like you had mentioned that people could call you or reach out if they wanted to know if something was recyclable. If like there was an app where you could do a picture, or you could say, hey, Alexa, I've got a Campbell soup can. Where does it go? Or something like that.
I tried. When Recycle Smart came out, is my screen still being shown?
Yes.
I think if I have time, maybe I can escape out of here and I can show you oh, that's my mother, my late mom. She passed January 7th of this year. That's her holding me as like a little tot. That's my little bow right there.
It's your presentation sheet is still up.
Oh, it is. Okay. All right, let's try this, Cindy.
So it's just you and I now.
Oh, okay. So let me share the screen. So this is really neat. Okay, is my Google showing?
Yep.
Okay, so you can just go to recycle. Oops. And it is. So this is the recyclopedia right here. And you just enter something in like water bottle. And it tells you right there what to do with it. So put this in your recycling bin.
Great.
So empty and replace cap. So they don't want the water or the soda. So it's a really nice widget. You know, I've been trying to convince DEP to put together some sort of app or something where you can say, hey, Siri, here, Alexa. But unfortunately, you know, the cost to hire these technology folks, this supersedes our ability to do so. So most of the time I have a few frequent flyers from different towns, and they call me, you know, weekly when they're cleaning out a closet or they just really want to do the right thing. And most of the time I'm able to answer. And if not, they just leave a quick, oh, it's Ann again. Can you call me back? I have a question. And I call her, and sometimes it's about old photographs or whatever. So.
Okay. And I get another question on, and I always think it's an important thing to bring up, drugs. You know, people pass away, there's, you know, pain pills, there's this left over, and
Yeah.
what's the best thing for people to do with those now? I know that
So sharps, like syringes and like needles for diabetics, put them in those bio containers, those protective containers. Calliope, the hazardous waste specialist, will pick it up. You know, you can call her, or she will there's fire stations that have those collection containers, and she goes around and picks those up. The town of Sandwich has a needle grinder at the police station, so they grind needles. The drugs themselves, like pharmaceuticals, please don't flush those. Those go into our drinking water system. But they have pharmacy takebacks. So CVS, Walgreens, and the police stations will take any sort of expired prescription, some sort of opioid, you know, if somebody is, you know, Oxycontin or something, or if you're a cancer patient, you have, you know, these heavier pain drugs and you're at home. Once that person is passed or it's no longer needed, you can take those drugs and prescription medications to your local pharmacy or to a police station, and they'll take them off your hands, no question asked.
Okay. Well, I thank you so much. This has been so informative and a lot of great information and links and things like that that people can go to afterwards. And if I get more questions and stuff, I'll pass them along to you. But we look forward to the next session on composting. And I thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope everybody that joined got a little tidbit of information.